Okay. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen saved the Jewish nation. What happened was Bilam realized he could not succeed in cursing the Jewish nation. He attempted to, but failed time after time. Finally, he gave advice to Balak. The only way to succeed is to get their God angry with them. Their God hates iniquity. He hates immoral behavior. If you mafkia the Benos Moab, if you get the daughters of Moab to seduce the Jewish men, their God will get angry with them. You have a shot at it. That was the advice that Bilam gave to Balak. And Balak, the king of Moab, did just that. And the Benos Moab seduced the Jewish men, and a Magefa began breaking out. Apparently, it was pretty serious. 24,000 people died. Zimri Ben Solo takes a Midianite woman, and Lifnei Am Va'eder, publicly he lives with her. Pinchas sees the debacle. He takes a romach, he takes a spear, enters the area, pierces both of them, kills them on the spot, drops their body on the ground. As soon as their bodies drop on the ground, the Magefa stops. But again, 24,000 people died. Parshas Pinchas opens up with Hashem saying, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, Heshivis Chamasi, he avenged my honor, and therefore I don't have to destroy the Jewish people. But there's one more part that Hashem says, Lachein asasi lo brisi shalom, therefore I'm going to give him a covenant of peace. And the Sruno explains, because of that bris shalom, Pinchas lived hundreds of years. He lived an extraordinarily long lifespan, and because he had this bris shalom, this covenant of peace. And then the Surah goes on to explain how that functions. He says, Eina hefsed elaba b'sibas ignakdus ahapchim. Any breaking down of the body only comes through competition of forces. It's only the competing forces in the human that causes the destruction of the person. Because Pinchas was granted peace, he was granted this bris shalom, he had equanimity, he had tranquility. Because of that, there were no forces within him competing. Because he had shalom, that's why his body lasted, that's why he lived hundreds of years. And this surno is eye-opening and a very compelling concept, but it should be rather troubling. Because we know that the human body was designed to last so long. The heart valves start wearing out. 70 years, 80 years, 90 years. But what the Surno is saying is that Pinchas lived hundreds of years, but not supernaturally. Not like Hashem did some kind of nace, some kind of extraordinary miracle. Rather, because Hashem granted him tranquility, peace. Because Hashem gave him this bris shalom, there was no inner conflict. And because there was no inner conflict, his body lasted hundreds of years. But again, that sounds very difficult to understand because, again, the human body was designed to last 70 years, 80 years, no longer. How do we understand this surno? And to understand this surno, I'd like to share with you something very compelling. Herbert Benson was a Harvard-trained cardiologist, and in the 1960s, he made an interesting discovery. When people would come into his office, he discovered that their blood pressure invariably was 6 to 8 to 10 points higher than it was when they took it at home. When they took their blood pressure at home, it was typically lower, and every single time when they came into his office, it was higher. And it didn't make sense. And he began thinking, began researching, and he reached a certain observation, a certain conclusion. In those days, doctors wore white coats, and he felt that there was a certain tension when a person stands in front of the doctor, a certain nervousness, and he proposed that this anxiety, the tension of being in front of the doctor, was causing their blood pressure to rise, and he began studying this phenomenon. Now, you have to understand, in the 1960s, psychosomatic medicine was considered an oxymoron, meaning it didn't exist. The mind and the body were two separate entities. What he was proposing was that in some manner, some way, anxiety seems to add to tension, hypertension, and might even be a precursor of strokes and heart attacks. And he began studying this. Now, here's what he did. He hired two psychologists, and he asked them to create a scale of measure of very distressing situations in life. And when these two psychologists created the scale, and they interviewed hundreds of people, and they asked them, what do you find stressful? Divorce, being fired from a job, death of a spouse, moving, and they created a scale. The single most stressful event that people describe was the death of a spouse. They called that rated it 100. Next down the line was divorce, and they rated that 73. And then they began correlating the amount of illness and disease to those states. And here's what they found. They found that 10 times more widows and widowers will die within 1 year of their spouse dying than any other people in that age group. Odder still, within 1 year of divorce, divorcees are 12 times as likely to have a serious illness as to anyone else in their comparable age group. And what Herbert Benson discovered was that there's a real correlation between tension, anxiety, nervousness, and bodily functions breaking down. But it wasn't just cardiovascular issues, and it wasn't just hypertension. It went across the gamut of the bodily functions. Asthma, herpes, diabetes, dizziness, all types of pains, backaches, arthritis, side effects of cancer became worse. And it's now become an accepted medical fact that anxiety, tension, nervousness greatly debilitates, greatly weakens the body. As a matter of fact, in 1999, Congress authorized $10 million to teach relaxation principles because they were finding that to such an extent, medicines didn't help, various surgeries didn't help, but teaching people to meditate, teaching people how to deal with stress was far more effective. And now 2/3 of cardiologists will offer their patients this type of therapy as a method to lower the tension, lower the pressure. And basically what Herbert Benson discovered is something that the Sforno taught us 500 years ago. And that is anxiety, nervousness, tension breaks down the body's system. Because the inner conflict, the conflict within the human, puts the body in a state of stress. And in that state of stress, there's inner conflict. The body is much more susceptible to disease, much more susceptible to breaking down. And it is now considered, along with smoking and diet, the 3 single things that a person can most likely change to impact their health. Diet is obvious. Exercise is obvious. But anxiety is right up there. And those 3 are considered the 3 areas that a person can use to change his health. And that is an interesting concept to learn. But I was zocher to hear of Elias Vey talk about this very Sforno, and he said that the greatest conflict in the human is something even deeper. And that is when I know within me I should be doing X and I'm doing Y. You see, within each human being there's an inner voice. Within each person there's an neshama, and that neshama speaks in very clear terms. And I have a choice in life. I either listen to that voice or I ignore it. But if I ignore it, there's an inner tension, there's a conflict. And I'd like to show you a very interesting example of this. I was a high school Rebbe for 15 years, and many years ago, lie detectors were much more popular, and it was a string of genevas in the yeshiva, and the yeshiva wanted to have a particular fellow who he suspected take a lie detector test. Okay, he brought him down to this private eye, and the private eye hooked him up to a polygraph. And what the polygraph does is it measures basically measures the blood pressure, and the person running it will ask a series of baseline questions to determine the person's baseline of their heart pressure, and then we'll ask the trigger question to see if there's a difference. Okay, in any case, brings this yeshiva boy in, and he asks him a series of baseline questions. What's your name? Where do you live? What do you like to do in your spare time? Do you have a girlfriend? All of a sudden, the needle shot up. And the private eye said, Rabbi, I don't know about stealing, but there's something here you better pay attention to. And here's the point. There was an inner conflict, an inner tension that's measurable. And I want to share with you what I'm talking about. You take a hardened criminal. A hardened criminal spends his whole life stealing, lying, and cheating. And they hook him up to a polygraph, and they ask him the questions. And he's practiced it for weeks. He might have practiced it for months, because he knows in those days you would go to jail based on the results. Just tell him you weren't there. Just tell him you didn't do it. And they start asking him the questions, and when they get to that key question, where were you on the night of December 15th? Whoosh. You see, there's an inner conflict. There's a voice within him that says, I did it, I was guilty. No, you weren't. I didn't. Just lie. But that inner conflict is measurable. It's palpable, measurable by a polygraph, and that is one of the strangest things about being a human being. and that is Hashem gave us a moral compass. Hashem gave us inner guidance, and you either listen to that voice or you suffer, because that voice was given to you to drive you to grow, to accomplish, to become great. And if you listen to it, you do exactly that. You live a life of meaning, of purpose, and you accomplish great things. But if you ignore that voice, it's not just that you get swept into the busyness and the activities of this world. There's an inner conflict that doesn't leave you. And if you'd like to see the United States of America in the 21st century, people make more money now. People have greater luxuries. People have freedom and every imaginable good situation. Kings of yesteryear could not imagine or envision the lifestyles that we enjoy today. And yet there are so many people who are depressed, who are broken, so many people who have this sense of emptiness. And I'm not talking about people with a predisposition towards depression. I'm not talking about if you have a family history. I'm talking about people who have no predisposition and just wake up at 40 or 50 and say, bleh, and what's life about? What does it mean? What's the purpose of it? And you could watch people with every imaginable measure of success, financially, career-wise. They can even have a family. They can even have great. But if you're pursuing goals other than what your Creator put you on the planet to do, guess what? There's an inner conflict. There's a battle within you. And the human being was finely crafted to grow, to accomplish, to withstand challenges, and given the inner voice to accomplish great things. If you do that, you're at peace with yourself. There's an inner harmony, a joy, a happiness. If not, there's a conflict. And it's a funny thing about being a human being. The human being was highly, highly toned to do one job. But if you take a scalpel and you use it to pry open a window, it does a lousy job and it dulls the blade. The human being was created to grow, to accomplish. Hashem gave us a Torah and gave us the mitzvahs, gave us the Torah as a spiritual nourishment and the guidebook to grow and accomplish. If you follow that, there's an inner peace, there's inner harmony. It doesn't mean everything in life is great. And it doesn't mean there won't be moments. And it doesn't mean you won't have trials and tribulations. But within you, there's a sense of peace. There's a love of life. And I'd like to share with you what I consider one of the most interesting tests of a person's madrega. If you're ever curious, what level am I on in spirituality? How am I holding? Where am I holding? I have a very interesting litmus test. Ask yourself, are you happy? Are you happy? Why? Because if you're at peace with yourself, there's a joy, you love life. Now again, that doesn't mean every moment in life is pleasurable, and it doesn't mean you don't have sense of not being totally who you're supposed to be. Granted, I'm nowhere near where I'm supposed to be, and granted, there's a lot more to go. But there's an inner peace, there's an inner harmony. I know why I'm alive. I get up in the morning, the eyes open, let's go. 24 hours to change myself, change the people around me. There's a love of life. But if you wake up and you say to yourself, ugh, another day, that's a very clear indicator that you're not living your life appropriately. I think what the Sforno shares with us is that Hashem designed the human being to be happy in this world. It's not the reason for creation. Hashem put us in this world temporarily to grow and accomplish. We're created for the world to come. But even in this world, Hashem wants us to enjoy this world, to be happy. Hashem wants us to be healthy and well. And when you live your life appropriately, that's exactly what happens. But if there's inner conflict, number one, the body starts breaking down. And number two, there's an inner unrest, an inner unhappiness. And you could watch people running and running and running from that voice. But you can't hide from it. Because you run, and there's an ever sense of emptiness. And I want to close with just a mushal that I think so well defines this. There was once a fellow, I read a book quite a number of years ago. This fellow grew up in the South in the 1920s. And if you know what it's like in the South in the 1920s, most people were poor. But he was black, so he was really poor. And he describes that he doesn't ever remember going to sleep at night not being hungry. He was hungry all day long, and every time he put his head down on the pillow, he had this gnawing hunger within him. One day he was walking to school, and he found the solution to his hunger. A fellow had left the garden hose out. He opened the spigot and began drinking and drinking and drinking, and he filled his belly. When he filled his stomach full, the hunger pains were no longer there. Until about an hour later, when the water passed, and the hunger pangs were worse than they ever were. Many, many people are hungry. They're hungry for growth, for accomplishments. And you could try to fill that with every imaginable pursuit. It could be pleasure, it could be wealth, it could be fame. But when you're hungry and you fill yourself with water, guess what? It doesn't sate you, it doesn't satisfy you. You're left as empty and as vacuous as you were before. And if you'd like to see the phenomena here, just look at the United States, look at Western society. People have so much success, so much in terms of material possessions, and there's such an emptiness. And again, I think what the Surah is sharing with us is, number one, the body breaks down when there's conflict, when there's tension, when there's anxiety. Number two, there's an inner conflict when you're not living at peace with yourself. And again, what Hashem wants for us is to be happy in this world, to grow, to accomplish, and reach hopefully, our destination in the world to come. And that will be my little part for tonight. And now I'm going to open the floor. Ushi, now you take over, and we'll open the floor to questions. Please feel free to raise your hand. You could type the question in if you're shy, but I much prefer if you actually raise your hand and ask. Please feel free to ask on this topic. It could be on any topic, but the floor is going to be open. Ushi is going to moderate, and I'm going to turn the floor over to him. He's going to sort of moderate the questions. Go for it, Ushi.
I'm going to try it. I got to try it first my inner contentment.
Are you content? Are you happy, Ushi? Are you content?
Working on it.
There's a smile on his face. How could he not be content? He is. He's very happy.
Anybody who's watching, please raise your hand if you want to ask a question. Put it in the Q&A boxes. The best part of this year that Rabbi Schaefer is definitely trying to accomplish is to make it interactive. We're definitely trying to focus on contentment and then that subject. But if it's any subject, please feel free to ask. We had a bunch of questions submitted beforehand, and I have my own questions. So I guess we'll start with that, and we'll see how it goes tonight. All right, Rabbi Schaefer?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay. You ready for this question? Why is it wrong to think that when I'm making X amount of money, or if I get this car, or that amount, or this thing, then I will be content and have an inner calm? Basically, that's why I'm so busy making money, because my goal is, after all, I have all the stuff, and then I'll be content.
Yep, exactly that. Exactly. I cannot agree more. That is very much the goal of many people, and it's like drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking, and guess what? It doesn't fill your soul. It doesn't fill the emptiness. It doesn't fill the void. I made $1 million. I made $10 million. I made $100 million. Wow! So now I'm happy. Why do I feel so vacuous? Why do I feel so empty? And the reason is quite simple, because Hashem didn't create you to make money. Hashem put Elsie the cow on this world to eat grass. And Hashem made man to grow, to accomplish, to reach great heights. When you live your life appropriately, there's an inner peace, there's a happiness. When you live your life in any other pursuit, guess what? You ain't going to be happy. There's an inner emptiness, an inner vacuous sense, and there's just a lack of contentment. So I think that's exactly the point, and that's exactly a classic example of this very concept.
Okay, somebody wants to have a little bit more clear definition over here. Contentment and inner calm. Can you please define what those words actually mean?
Okay, so that's a very fair question, and really, it's clearly measurable when you put your head down on a pillow at night. Is there a sense of accomplishment, a sense of peace? You see, Hashem finally crafted the person. Within me is an neshama that cries out to do what's noble, what's good, what's proper. And if there's an inner sense of I'm not doing, I'm not growing, I'm not accomplishing, that's disharmony. And that disharmony is something you very much should be attuned to, and you could very much feel. Inner contentment is a sense of, listen, I'm not great, I'm not perfect, I could do a lot more, but Baruch Hashem, I'm growing, I'm accomplishing. I look at myself today, and I'm greater than I was yesterday. I look at myself a year ago, and I see a marked difference. I increased, I improved in this area and that area. And by the way, I'll share with you an interesting Schaeferism. It's a little bit off this point, but here it is. If you go to sleep at night and you don't feel that you're failing in at least one area of life, then you're failing at life. Let me say that again. If you feel that you're not failing in at least one area of life, then you're failing at life itself. Why? Because if you understood your potential, if you understood what you could accomplish, and you were setting goals, you realize that, hey, I'm doing okay here, I'm doing well here, but in this area, I'm really not hitting home runs. In this area, really I need improvement. And if you don't find at least one area of life that you're really not doing at all, that you're really not accomplishing, then I guarantee you don't have a clue to your potential, and don't have a clue to what you can accomplish. So don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about complacency. A person should be driven and a person should have great lofty goals, but at the same time that I'm not hitting all my goals, and at the same time that I'm really falling short, there's a sense of accomplishment, a sense of growing, an inner peace because I'm living the purpose that Hashem put me on a planet. Hashem didn't put us on this planet to be perfect. Hashem put us on a planet to grow, to be challenged, to reach above, to transcend. And when you're involved in that, there's an inner peace, an inner tranquility, and you feel it. I don't know how to say it other than say you feel it.
Thank you, Claire. There's a bunch of questions coming in at the same time. I just want to follow up on one question, then we'll take those live questions. Bromies, just wait a minute. Somebody wrote back to me on this particular question. As far as the money, I know I need my cars, I need my this. He said, that's a nice madrega, but now I need stuff. I need basics. I like money. I need a nice car. So how do I, without going into the hoicha madrega, how does the regular person emotionally accept?
Yeah. How does one distinguish between needs and wants? You mean, okay, needs are needs and wants are wants. Don't get me wrong. I believe a person has very real needs. You have to be a mensch. You have to drive a car that's respectable. You have to have a house that's respectable. You have to wear reasonable clothing. And needs are very real. And a person has a right to say, listen, Hashem, I'm serving you. These are my needs. You created the world. You run the world. I trust for you to provide. I'm going to work hard, but please provide it. Needs are things that are appropriate. Needs are things that are fine. Wants are a little bit better than that. Wants are things I want to have. Luxury, do not fret, for tomorrow a necessity you will be yet. Meaning to say, a luxury which is beyond what I need. I need a Maserati. I need a Lexus. You don't need it. You want it. I want to have X amount of money in my retirement. Do you need it? I want to have $10 million. Do I ask so much? Hashem, I ask for a helicopter and an island in the South Pacific. I don't ask so much. Simple things. Well, guess what? You wants, you're allowed to need. And your things that you need, let me say it this way, things that you need are appropriate, things that you need you're allowed to ask Hashem for, and things that you need are within the Torah context. Wants and luxuries are things beyond that. And the great secret of life is that luxuries never make you happy. They look so glittery, they look so glamorous, and you acquire it and you feel as empty as you were before. Jeff Bezos has a lot of money. $170 billion is a lot of money.
That was a few months ago.
You're right. Well, no, it was pretty recently. But anyway,
for everybody who lives in Hollywood is happy. They have money.
That's right. That's correct. With a divorce rate of 99.9% for the first marriage and a higher divorce rate for the second marriage, they're all
101% on the second marriage.
They're all living the life of luxury and happiness, joy-filled. By the way, I have a little Musar exercise if you'd like to see. Stand on 5th Avenue on 12 after COVID, when people begin living again, and watch the stream of humanity. Find me a human being with a smile on his face. You'll see a lot of intense stares, a lot of looking away, avoiding. Find me a human being who looks genuinely happy, and I'd be hard pressed to find it because I haven't seen it yet. And that's odd because many of these people are successful. Many of these people live in very luxurious houses. Not everyone, but certainly people amongst. And what you'll find is invariably the money, the fame, all of the things that I feel are going to make me happy, that I so hotly pursue, leave me as empty as before. Why? Because they don't fill my soul. There's an emptiness inside me. Hashem created me to grow, to accomplish. When I fill those needs, there's an inner joy and inner happiness. If I pursue anything else, I'm just left empty. And that's not a high madrega. That's reality. I'm not talking about holiness. I'm talking about basic happiness. If you would like to be happy, all you have to do is follow the Torah. And more than that, if you would like to be miserable, just follow the pursuit of pleasure. Just set your goal to acquire as much pleasure, as much wealth, as many luxuries as you can, and I guarantee your life will be misery. But why? I got everything, money and pleasure, I do what I want. Yeah. And if you were created for that purpose, you would be well suited for that. But guess what? That's not what your Creator shaped you for. Hashem fashioned you to grow and accomplish. And when you use your life for anything other than which you were given it to do, there's an inner imbalance, there's an inner disharmony, and it doesn't make sense because I have so much, but I'm so unhappy. What can I tell you? Try it. Badok umatzah. Try it. See what happens.
I don't know if it was one of your shiurim, Rabbi Schaefer, but it was you, and I think it was one of your shiurim that you said if you took a list and you wrote down all the wants or needs that you have, you would realize about 90-something% of it is just really wants. Very few needs. Most people have basic needs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty true. I mean, there are things that you need, and I'm not denying that. But again, typically the reason why I'm not happy is because I don't have, and those things I don't have typically are not needs, they're wants. Right. But I think that is the point.
Okay, there's a bunch of questions here from all sides, Q&As, live, and text. So let's take the lives because they go first. We'll take Avrami first, okay? Hey, Avrami, how are you?
Great, Baruch Hashem. How are you? How are you, Chief?
Hi, Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom. I want to ask Rabbi on a question on this topic, and then I have a second unrelated question, which is
a follow-up. We're the follow-up. Okay, go ahead.
Always a follow-up.
Uh-huh.
So I'm sort of going the complete opposite direction. Like everyone's talking about, I want more, which is teva. But is there a cheshbon a person should make in certain situations, maybe where he's given a choice, choose one situation versus another situation, and in another situation he's going to have to be more moser nefesh, to make ends meet, or maybe certain things. I want to give an example of what I mean.
Please do.
I think Rabbi might be aware of when the Chavetz Chaim got a new building, Kiran Hills. Rav Zatzal, he wasn't. I think there was another option, either Muncie or Lakewood. I'm not sure which one it was, but so why Kiran Hills? So I think that from what I've heard, the cheshbon is that if you put in Lakewood, Muncie, whatever it was, it's going to be too geschmack. It's going to be like too much, things going on. So much better put it in the real estate of Kiran Hills. The prices are crazy, and it's a little bit more difficult. You have to be a little bit more nefesh, and you're still fighting for what we stand for, and that makes your cone a little bit more. So I don't know, is that a cheshbon a person should
Okay,
make?
so I hate to disagree, but I don't think it's true, and I don't think the concept is true. The Shiva Zatzal, for many, many years, was talking about where to move. The Shiva Zatzal was a tremendous pioneer. He originally wanted Long Island. We'll take over all over Long Island. We'll make the whole 100,000 Jews from. He had a tremendous pioneering sense. Kiran Hills was not chosen because it was not because it was a difficult situation. But more than that, a person should never put himself in a Mokum Nisayon. If you put yourself in a Mokum Nisayon, you don't know you're going to succeed. And David HaMelech did it. David HaMelech failed terribly. So if you have a choice between a difficult situation or an easy situation, you choose the easy situation every time. Why? Somebody's mic is open. I can't hear, but okay.
I had to mute up because he has too much background noise.
Okay. But the point is, if you have an easy situation or a difficult situation, you choose the easy situation. Why? What is the point of putting yourself into a Mokum Nisayon, into a difficult situation? When Chazal describe being Moser Nefesh, that's where I know the right thing is to do this. But this path that I'm going to take comes at a great expense, comes with great difficulty. Then I ignore the difficulties, I ignore the expense, and I go forward because I know it's the right thing. But if I have two choices, equal options, and one's easier and the other's harder, I don't think there's any mitzvah whatsoever to put yourself in a difficult situation, certainly not to put yourself into Mokum Nisayon, and I wouldn't think that's wise at all. By the way, it's hard enough to succeed when life is easy. Kol shekain when it's a little bit more difficult. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can we go to the next one?
Please.
We're getting a little bombarded tonight.
Rami, I'm sorry you lost your follow-up because of the noise in the background. Sorry.
Next week. Okay, next up, Rami. Hello.
Hi, how are you, Rabbi? How you doing?
Shalom Aleichem. How are you, Rami?
Good. Where do emotions come into the equation here? And I'll explain to you what I mean. If a person is pursuing a life of meaning and purpose, but there's always challenges in life, and there's always things that go on. And even if you're doing things with the right intentions, if a person has emotional challenges, say they're insecure, right?
Right.
So they could be pursuing the right path, but they're still not finding necessarily peace when they put their head to the pillow, even though they feel good about what they're doing innately, and they feel a sense of fulfillment that becomes that, and their ability to feel what they're feeling because of what they're doing, what's accomplishing, It's kind of like certain emotional, whatever the issues are, that prevent a person from experiencing the true happiness that they should feel based on what they're doing.
Okay, Romy, I hear your question, and I think it's a very valid question. And let me stress, I think you said it perfectly. There's an inner sense of accomplishment, satisfaction, and yet there's something that's preventing me from being totally happy. Now, there's no question that there are many things that a person will experience that are outside what we would call the normal, what I would call outside the normal avodas Hashem, that will impede their happiness. A person has extreme anxiety, a person has OCD, a person has various psychological or emotional conditions. You have to deal with that directly. It's no different than if a person has a leg injury. If you have a leg injury, your leg is going to hurt, and you got to deal with that pain. And if you don't deal with that pain, it's going to prevent you from succeeding in life. Now, it's something that you have to deal with directly, and if you don't deal with it, again, it's going to impede, but it's really outside the realm of what I'm discussing this evening. What I'm saying is, there's no question that there are various situations and conditions where a person has to work outside of meaning and purpose, and they have to work directly on an issue. Again, it could be emotional, it could be psychological, it could be various, it could be traumatic, whatever it might be, and a person has to do that, and if they don't do the work, they're going to be unhappy. But again, I think you said it well. There is an inner sense of accomplishment, but yet there's some unease that's preventing me from truly being happy, and you have to deal with that directly. But again, it's dealing with directly and at the same time growing and accomplishing. And for the record, it might well be a big part of a person's mission in life. In other words, meaning each person is given a different load to lift, a different load to carry, and each person is asked one question: how much of you did you become? For one person, it might be very easy to do whatever. For the next person, it might be very difficult. I think I gave an example a few weeks ago. There's a fellow I know who cannot daven with a minyan. Not because of COVID, not because of Corona. He can't daven with a minyan because he has social anxiety. He doesn't know where to put himself. Too close to this guy, too close to that guy. He cannot be in a minyan. Now, what are you going to say to a guy like that? That guy has an issue that he needs to deal with. Now, he may never be able to really reach inner peace. Likely, if he works on it and does the work, he can reach a certain sense, but he will always have a certain unease in social settings. That's part of the lot that he was given. But he was given the ability to grow and accomplish. What's demanded of him might be very different than what's demanded of you and I, but at the end of the day, his growth and his accomplishments are within his realm, and he has to work on two fronts. One is his main avodas Hashem, which is learning and davening and mitzvahs, etc. And in addition to that, he has to work on that individual issue because he has to conquer that itself, and that is itself part of his avodas Hashem. Avrami, did I answer the question a little bit? But you're muted, so you can't say it didn't.
It did.
That's great. Oh, it did. Okay.
It definitely did. I just have, it's not really a question or a comment, and that is, forget about OCD and all the big, issues. Even if somebody has, smaller issues, people don't necessarily seek help for them, but, or maybe they should, right?
Maybe they should.
But it kind of, not maybe, it kind of takes a tool that we have, like a barometer, like you said, of, when you hit the pillow, right? And you can't necessarily trust that emotion in terms of deciding what you do and what you don't do. A person could be doing something very meaningful, and they could say to themselves, I'm miserable, or I'm unhappy. And they could kind of be blindsided from continuing along the path of something that they were born to do because they have an external issue that they need to work on.
I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Yes, you are. I do agree. I really should qualify. If there is an external, so for instance, I would just give the corollary. If you have a nail in your foot, you're not going to be happy. You could be growing, you could be accomplishing, but there's a nail that's been driven into your foot and you're in huge pain, and therefore, unless you get that nail out of your foot, you are not going to be happy. So you're right, it could be that a person be'etzem should be happy, but there's a psychological or emotional problem that's crippling them and holding them down and not allowing them to experience happiness, joy, contentment, and it won't necessarily reflect on there not being a proper Eved Hashem. I grant that. That is true. However, long term, it's something they have to deal with, something they have to work on, and hopefully, Mitzvah Hashem, with the right work, with the right diligent work, Hashem, they'll succeed in solving it. But I really want to stress something very, very important. I've mentioned this before, I'll mention it again. I have been in intense therapy for 39 years now. Every day, I have intense therapy. At least a half hour a day, I sit in front of a Musa Sefer and I try to get my brain to be normal. I try to get my thinking to be in line with the Torah. And I talk to myself and I work on myself. And if you've ever seen a psychologist and if you've ever spoken to a therapist, what you do in that office is much akin to what I do at a Chovos Levovos and Mesil Sharm, and it's been decades. And let me tell you something, not every area have I exactly hit home runs in, but that's a huge part of growth. In other words, meaning people sort of have this attitude of, Hashem, why do I need this? If I didn't have this problem, I could grow, I could be so much different. That's a huge part of your avodas Hashem, a huge part of what you're supposed to be working on, and eventually, even a person who has these issues should reach a sense of contentment, a sense of joy and satisfaction. But again, I grant you that it could be that a person is growing right now, but still they have a psychological issue that could be preventing them from really enjoying, and that might, you're right, limit the barometer, the litmus test. Point well taken.
Thank you, Rebbe.
Okay, good.
Rabbi Schaefer, I got a lot more questions. Can we
Yes.
wrap it up a little bit?
Go for it.
Okay. I heard something called Lego therapy from the book Viktor Frankl. Can Rebbe explain basically how this helps people find meaning in life?
Okay, so Lego therapy is not when you play with Legos. Logotherapy is Viktor Frankl's thought process. Viktor Frankl was a Viennese psychiatrist. Viktor Frankl discovered that he was Jewish on a train bound for Auschwitz. And Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man in Search of Meaning. In this book, he describes two very different phenomena. The first half of the book is his description of Auschwitz. And he describes playing psychiatrist, trying to be dispassionate, stepping back and analyzing what was going on. And it's a compelling read. The second part of his book is when he landed on these shores in the United States of America, and he opened his practice in the the East 80s. Now, he had been a world-famous psychiatrist. He put out his shingle in the Upper East Side, and in a very short time, his practice was filled. But he describes that what he was finding here were symptoms and conditions that he didn't see before. In 20 years of practice in Vienna, he had never experienced it. He describes a woman would walk in, and he'd say, "What's up, madam? I'm depressed, doc. Why is it? I don't know, doc. Is it your family? No. Is it you married? No. Is it your bridge game? Why are you depressed? I don't know. That's why I'm here." A man would come in his mid-40s. "Doc, I'm depressed. Why? Is it your family? No. Is it your bridge game? No. What? Why?" Patient after patient would come in without an attributable cause. An attributable cause means a reason why a person should be depressed. If a woman was married for 35 years and she just lost her husband, that's a traumatic event, and we could well understand why it may put her into a very deep tailspin and may take a long time to get out of it. When you have a predisposition towards depression, that's also a very real reason why a person might be depressed. But would you like to know that clinical studies today show that 82% of clinical depressions do not have an attributable cause? No predisposition, no trauma. They wake up and say, life stinks, I'm empty. In any case, Viktor Frankl formed what's known as a new field of psychology, logotherapy, where he claims that people without meaning, people without purpose should be depressed, will be depressed. Now, he doesn't quite get it, and therefore he says any meaning will do, any purpose will do, but the point that he concludes is that meaning and purpose in life is essential for happiness, and that part he got 100% correct. The mistake he makes, unfortunately, is that any sort of purpose does do sufficiently. So, for instance, I was once speaking somewhere, and I was speaking about such a concept about meaning and life purpose, and a fellow came over to me and said, I'm so glad you spoke about this, because I have real meaning in life, and now that you've spoken about this, it reinforced so much what I do, and I'm so glad. I said, that's very interesting. What do you do? He said, I collect matchbook covers. I have a collection of 3,000 matchbooks, and it gives me such purpose. And I said to myself, Oh, you are kidding. That wasn't quite what I meant. I don't believe the human being has deep inner satisfaction, has a sense of great accomplishments because he collected money or prizes or fame or matchbook covers. And in that sense, logotherapy is a little bit questionable because, again, you self-define what meaning and purpose is. Hashem created us with a very real purpose. And when you live your life with meaning and purpose as the Torah defines, and you're growing according to the Torah system, there is an inner peace. There's an inner harmony. You're living in sync with you. And when you're living in disharmony, and you're ignoring that inner voice, and you're running from pleasure to pleasure, from busyness to busyness, from the iPhone to the internet, and you're just so locked into this world, there's an emptiness, there's a vacuousness, and that is, unfortunately, one of the greatest causes of depression. So I believe that's the concept of logotherapy, and that's where Viktor Frankl sort of coined that phrase and introduced to Western civilization.
Okay, there's a bunch more questions here. Let's take this one on the side. How can someone feel I think we answered it already, but maybe have a different take on it. How could somebody feel inner peace and happiness when struggling financially? Depends on others for help. The feelings of powerlessness and humiliation. The person who's really in the dumps. I mean, use financially, it could be anything.
Okay, now I'm not telling you that every situation in life is easy, and I'm not telling you every situation in life is geschmack, but I am telling you that if a person puts his brain on and really grows, accomplishes, and really understands life, there is an inner peace and happiness, even in poverty, even in disease, even in difficult straits. Now, let me be frank with you. We are all desperate. We are all in deep trouble. I know that if I cross the street at the wrong time and a truck comes, it's over for me. But more than that, I also recognize, at least on some level, that I cannot control my destiny. I cannot control my fortune. By the way, what's going to happen after COVID? Is the economy going to go back to flourish, or is it going to tank? I don't have a clue. But not only don't I have a clue, I don't control it. And even the Treasury Department doesn't control it, and even President Trump doesn't control it. And one of the great miracles of today is that the stock market is still rallying, and it's something that's inexplicable. And if you understand the amount of unemployment and the amount of lack of earnings, and yet the stock market is still flourishing and the economy is still booming, you recognize that as a nace, and you also recognize that it's very, very fragile, and I don't control it. So if you want to know desperation, if you want to know what it means to just recognize one thing, when I daven to Hashem, Baruch Aleinu es Hashana Hazos, I'm saying the words, I do not control how much money I make. Now, Baruch Hashem, I don't have to suffer, as the person is asking the question, I don't have to suffer actually going out to people with my hand, please help me, please help me. I say that to my Creator, and hopefully I mean it. But that reality is that Hashem provides for each person, whether it be becovered or not becovered, and there's tremendous bracha in your life. You still have many things, you still have much gifts, you still have existence and health and well-being, and therefore there's a lot to be grateful for, a lot to be appreciative for. And again, I'm not making light of anyone else's nisayon, but I am saying that everyone has stuff, everyone has issues, and I'll quote Abraham Lincoln because I think he said it best. People choose to be about as unhappy as they choose to be. Meaning, there's really a choice. Everyone has issues, everyone has trouble, and you make a choice in life. You either embrace it and say, Hashem knows what He's doing. Hashem gave me the right situation for me, and this is what I need. You embrace it, and you're happy, or you buck the system, you fight against it, and you're miserable. You're not going to make more money. You're not going to have better health. You're not going to change your destiny, but you will be miserable or happy based on your understanding, based on your accepting it or not. And let me come back to something I said before. You have to learn Musar. I don't know how to say this. If you're not learning a regular daily Musar Seder, then you're at the whims of whatever winds blow. And guess what? Things are going to happen, and you're not going to have any control, and you're not going to be able to train yourself, and you're not going to be able to work on yourself. And you have to learn Musar every day, because that's the only hope you have of real sanity, real joy, real happiness, because you learn to control your thinking, learn to control your mind. If you're able to use a Musar Seder, great. If not, you go to the Shmuz.com, Musar 101, or the Musar Vad. There's Shurim and Shurim, Amisil Sharim, and Chovos Vavos. You could listen all day, but the point being, you have to work on yourself, you have to grow, and then there's an inner peace, inner happiness when you understand what Hashem's doing, you understand your purpose in life.
Thank you. Again, anybody else who's on and wants to ask live, please raise the hand so we can push that. I have so many questions here. I'm fully loaded. Let's go to this one. You ready?
Ready.
I've had many jobs in my life, and none of them brought me fulfillment. I know what I don't want to do with my life, but how do I determine what I should be doing with my life?
Okay, so that's a loaded question, but let me say this. The Chovos Halevavos explains to us that Hashem gives a nature to each person, and you should pursue that nature. Much like the chatul, the cat has an inner instinct for the mouse, the robin hungers for the worm, the Siberian tiger hungers for the impala. There's a natural instinct that each animal has to earn its living. Hashem gives them the inclination, the aptitude, and the tools to earn their living. So too Hashem gives each human being the aptitude, the tools, and the ability to earn his living. But each person has a different teva, a different nature, a different inclination, and what you're supposed to do is follow that inclination. These are my skill sets, these are my abilities, this is what's naturally something that suits me. You then go into the marketplace and find the best possible fit, the one that makes the most sense, and you pursue that path. And then you know that exactly the amount of money you're supposed to make has been set, and that is what's going to be determined before Rosh Hashanah, and that's the amount of money you make. But you see, you're supposed to follow your instinct, find in the marketplace the best way to use it, and then guess what? A, you'll make the same amount of money that you were supposed to make anyway. B, there's an inner satisfaction. Because if Hashem designed you to do one job, if you were designed to be an architect and instead you put little numbers in boxes, you become an accountant, you're not going to be happy. If food service is your passion, is your love, and instead you decide I want to be a dentist, you're not going to be satisfied. You're not going to be happy. You were built to do a certain job. When you do that job, there's an inner balance, an inner peace, and inner happiness. When you do something else, guess what? It doesn't fit. Number one, you're not talented. You won't be skilled at it. You won't make a penny more, but you'll also be hugely unhappy. So I hope that answers that to some extent.
Next question. A person's negative inner voice drives a person crazy. How do we make our inner voice calm and quiet?
Okay, I wish I had the person online to explain a little bit more what they're saying.
So saying basically all the machshavas that we get that sometimes are, we have, what makes a person so stressed out? You have the stress in your mind, the anxiety. It's the voice that's talking to you, right? A voice that's telling you, oh, I need to make more money. Oh, this is bothering me. Oh, what's going to happen when this happens? How would Rebbe give us a method that when you get these, I want to use, I forgot the therapeutic terminology. I think it's ruminating. These ruminating thoughts. How do we work through that so that we can have more inner peace?
Okay, I spoke to a guy this week with the following question. He has 3 kids, Baruch Hashem, and he has major shalom bayis problems. What's the major shalom bayis problems? His wife feels that she's not ready to have more kids. It's been a number of years since his youngest has been born, and she's not ready. And he's furious with her. Why not? To bring another shaman into the world, it's so holy, it's so kaddish, and he's going on and on. And more than that, he explains to me the following. He's so furious with her, and it's been going on so long that he's ready to divorce her. And he says, I will fight for my kids. I'll get full custody. And I said to him, 1 second, stop. Listen to what you're saying. What you're saying to me is you're willing to destroy your family. You're willing to put your children through torture. One of the most destructive things to children is living through a contentious divorce, and I guarantee that divorce will be very contentious. So you're willing to destroy your 3 children that you have for the tumor. Maybe you could have another one. I said, what you have to understand is you are listening to the voice of the Satan. Meaning to say, we believe that it's my brain who's talking to me. Many times it is, and many times it's not. Many times it's desire, many times it's anger, many times it's jealousy, and many times it's the Satan, which is a malach, who speaks in my brain and whispers. And if you don't believe me, the Chovos Halevavos is page after page after page of descriptions of things that the Satan will say in your brain. Clever, brilliant, guile. Things that are just so tricky, so devious, they have to say, wow, that's incredible. And he describes that that's exactly what the Satan will say. In this case, in this guy's brain, over and over, ruminating, and again, was the voice, I have to have more kids, it's a mitzvah, it's serving Hashem, how can this woman be so evil? And I said to him, you have to recognize that voice is not your Yetzer Tov, It's not your neshama. That is the Satan talking in your brain, and you have a choice. You either train yourself to ignore that voice, or you suffer. Because if you listen to that voice, you are going to be one miserable human being. If you divorce your wife, you're going to be miserable. If you don't, you're going to be miserable. Either way, that voice inside you is not a holy, proper force. So, not every voice that we hear in our brain is holy, is the neshama. What I was referring to earlier was that inner voice that is your neshama speaking out to grow and accomplish and do what's right. However, oftentimes there are other voices. There's desire, there's anger, there's jealousy, and again, sometimes there are directly voices of the Satan, and discerning which one it is isn't always so simple, but is essential for success in life. Does that answer the question, Nishi?
Yes, I have a follow-up question on this.
Yeah.
So in the beginning of this year, we started, I'm going to be a London. Beginning of this year, we said, is that a person has an inner voice, all right, because when we do a polygraph, we can see our sentences that telling us certain things are right, certain things are wrong. So we do have an inner voice. How do we differentiate between the inner voice, which is telling us what to do, and the inner voice, which is the Yitzhar?
Okay, that is the $1 million question. And the real answer to that question is be shoel eitzah. Asay lecha rav, have a rebbe, ask, and ask again. Very often, it's not so easy to discern. Now, let me really be very candid here. My Rebbe, the Shiva Zatzal, used to say often that there is a way to answer any ethical question you have. He said, obviously, your first line of defense is ask. Find people older, wiser, find Das Torah. But let's assume you get to a case that you can't ask. Whatever the reason is, you have to call the shot. How do you know? How do you know what the right thing to do is? Shiva Zatzal said, I have a formula that will work every time. You close your eyes and ask yourself one question. What is the right thing to do? Forget the consequences. Forget the agenda. Forget what it means if I do this. Just what do I think is the right thing to do? And if you ask yourself, what do I think the right thing to do is, and you listen, you'll know the correct thing, because Hashem gave you a neshama that's pure, that's holy. That neshama was taken from under the kisei hakavod, and that neshama has been perfectly geared, perfectly programmed to grow and accomplish and paskin every shaila of your life. The difficulty is that there are competing voices, and the difficulty is that, but I want and I need and I want and I want, but you're able to discern if you're really honest and if you really want to know the truth. So if you want to be able to discern whether the voice is pure or impure, you have to ask it. First of all, again, your first line of defense is Asay lecha rav, have a rebbe, and ask. However, if it's a situation where you can't, you have to ask yourself, what do I think is the right thing to do? What do I think is proper? Now, if the voice is saying, and by the way, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, because you'll hear the voice, and that voice is either something holy, good, and proper, or something very improper. Even when it's a very debatable issue, even when it's one of those l'shem shamayim, a war l'shem shamayim, there's an inner knowledge that at least at the start, it's stemming from arrogance, it's stemming from gaiva, it's stemming from jealousy. That's exactly last week's parsha. Exactly.
Okay,
Right.
So we have a live question from Avram, but before we go to him, I just want to ask a follow-up question on this. So we're saying that how do we find the inner happiness and peace? That when we follow the Torah, we do what's right. If someone knows that they're doing the right thing, but they're not enjoying it, is that problematic? For example, a person is having a hard time learning. Her mother finds it hard to be with her children all day. So they are following the magic recipe of the Torah, and that should find them inner peace. But at the end of the day, the things that they're supposed to be doing, they're finding it either problematic, not enjoyable, or hard.
Right. Exactly. So let me be very, very candid. Following the Torah is not the formula for happiness. Following the Torah as the Torah demands or asks from us to do is the formula for happiness. That means to say, there's an energy. You're supposed to love Hashem with all of your heart, all of your soul, ready to give up my life. When there's a passion, when there's a drive, there's an inner peace and an inner happiness. When you're going through the motions, guess what? It doesn't work. Now, don't get me wrong. In the beginning in learning, it's difficult. If you're first starting out, you're a high school guy, you're a beginning base medrash, or even if you're even advanced in learning, but there are times when it's not so simple, and you do it anyway. Eventually it comes. But the point is, when you're really growing, when you're really accomplishing, when you're really doing what you're supposed to be doing, there is an inner peace. Now, it's not always so simple. You're not always on your A game, but when you're growing, accomplishing, there is an inner peace, and you enjoy what you're doing. If you're finding davening boring, if you're finding learning boring, there's real work that you have to do. And that real work is getting your life in order. Sit down with a Musa Sefer, sit down, listen to the Shmuz, listen over and over until you begin to realize the incredible accomplishments, the incredible value. Believe me, so many guys say learning is boring, they go out and start making money. Wow, money is great, wow, and they're still living it. Why? Because money is important, learning isn't. But that's a value system, and that value system can change, and that value system, your currency, is something that you could develop. It takes a while, it doesn't happen overnight, but the more you grow, the more you accomplish, the more your currency changes, the more you enjoy learning, davening, and etc., and you become a very, very fulfilled human being. Yoshi, does that answer the question?
Yes, very strong.
Okay, good.
Okay, let's get Rabbi Ram on to ask. Hi, how are you?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Rabbi has his voice back from last week.
Yes, thank you.
Interesting question I had, which was always bugging me, was that the idea that, of course, looking at your own self and your own talents and all that, and trying to find what did you do. But something that always bugged me was I always have small talents. Let's say I like photography, but then again, you can go into different fields of photography, or you can go into graphics, or let's say I like math, but there's many jobs that can deal with math. So I wouldn't know how to test my abilities to know which, take on the general talent, the general something that maybe has a little something, and bring it to more of a practical.
Okay, that's a very good question. So let's assume photography is your thing. You just naturally pull to it, naturally gravitate. You have to go into the marketplace and you have to find yourself a niche. Now, it doesn't succeed instantly, it won't succeed immediately, but you have to find something that makes sense. Listen, wedding photography is not ideal for me, but I see there's a niche there. Or headshots, corporate environment, that's more where there's a niche. You have to search, and now your initial, you may fail initially, you may have to try again, but you're going out there and finding this thing that's most logical, that makes the most sense within your given area. Now, it happens to be usually when people are, they say photography, usually it's more the creative field in general that appeals to them. So it could be that photography is not the end game for you. It could be, as you say, it's either graphics, or it could be videography, or it could be any sort of creative type of work similar to that. So you really have to pursue it. And by the way, the most successful entrepreneurs fail many times. Find me a successful businessman, I guarantee, read his biography, you'll see he failed multiple times. And the bigger they are, the more times they failed. So you have to go out there and you have to be prepared to take the plunge, try this, try that, and you find eventually Hashem leads you to what you're supposed to be. You see, you have to keep in mind, Hashem still runs the world, and Hashem wants you to succeed. You do your part, you find your talents, your skills, and you ask yourself, what is the most logical approach for me right now? And you go out there and you do it, and you may find doors open or doors closed. If the doors close after time, you take a little different tack. You may find, okay, it's videography, it's not videography, it's graphics, it's something related. But you try different things, and eventually Hashem leads you to what you ultimately should be doing, and Mitzvah Hashem, you find great success.
All right, Moshe, you ready for the next one?
I'm ready. Did I answer the question? No? Are we good?
Yes.
You say yes, but you didn't ask the question. All right, but let's assume yes. Okay. Ushi, this is great. You get to mute the person, and then, of course, they answer the question because he doesn't say anything after, right? Okay, we're good.
I'm going to mute you if I don't like it. Okay, number 10. I think this is a great question I just got. My thoughts are that I'm a failure. After all I did so many things wrong and things are not working out the way I want, I know you might tell me that this is the Yitzhara, but deep down I truly believe that I'm a failure.
Welcome to the club. Welcome to the club. I have been working on anger, arrogance, jealousy for 35, 39 years. And guess how much progress I've made? I've been working on davening for 39 years. And guess how I made a little progress, a little bit, but I get it. Ask me the next Tosas of the page that I'm learning now, and I don't have a clue. What do you mean? You've been at this game for a good long time. You're a grandfather already. I have a 10-year-old granddaughter. Do you mean to say you still haven't mastered Shas? What's your problem? I'll tell you what my problem is. I got a little brain, and I am failing in many, many areas. So welcome to the club. And now you have to do that very critical step. You have to recognize that I failed doesn't make me a failure. I failed in this area. I dropped the ball here. I failed this Nisayan. It's true. But that doesn't make me a failure. David HaMelech failed in Nisayan, a mighty big Nisayan. As Melech B'Yisrael, he lived with an Eishes Ish. It doesn't get worse than that. He was the Mechaber of Tehillim. He was the Lev of the Am. And Lifnei Am Va'eda, he lived with an Eishes Ish. It doesn't get worse than that. Which bridge did David HaMelech jump off of? He didn't jump off a bridge. He became one of the 7 greatest human beings who lived in existence. Because he recognized, I failed, but I failed doesn't mean I'm a failure. I failed in this area, I dropped the ball here, I'm not succeeding here, but as a human being, I'm accomplishing, I'm growing, and I'm doing. And that is exactly a voice of the Son. Now don't get me wrong, in our day it is so common, and it's such a common refrain, I'm a failure, I'm worthless, so you have to deal with it, you have to work on it, and sometimes it requires working directly on it. And by the way, go to the shmuz.com and you'll see there's a series called Arrogance and Humility, Creating a Balanced Self-Image. I highly recommend that you listen to that series, because a lot of what that deals with is exactly this point, creating a balanced self-image. Recognizing that, yes, I have shortcomings. Yes, I have things that I don't really succeed in. And I have real things that I have flaws in. And at the same time that I failed, that doesn't make me a failure. And that balance is a very difficult balance to attain, but that balance is one of the keys to growth in life.
Let's say, Rabbi Shafir, that they say all the big successful people, and Elon Musk, the one from Tesla, wrote a whole book. If he failed so many times, he lost probably more money than most people make in a lifetime.
Yep.
So failure is part of succeeding.
Yep.
Okay. I have a few other questions over here.
Yep.
Somebody asked an interesting question. I want to see how Rabbi Shafir would answer this. If Jeff Bezos was a Yid.
Yeah. He might be, by the way. There's a big debate. It's very hard. They keep searching. Is he? Isn't he? Is he? But let's assume he's not. Okay.
What should his lifestyle be like? Like in an average house, give away all his money. Like if somebody really makes a lot of money, right? Obviously, we don't want to fall into what we just discussed. People have all the money and they suffer with the depression and divorce rate. So if somebody is following the right way, but he makes this tremendous amount of money, what would be the correct lifestyle?
Okay, so let me share with you something interesting. I had a Talmud in my high school shiur, actually more than one, but one in particular stands out, who long after he was in my shiur, we would learn once a week. And one day he says to me, Rebbe, I'm sorry, next Friday I can't learn. I tried to get out of it, but I apologize. What happened? The governor wanted to have breakfast with him, and the time the governor wanted to have breakfast was 9:30 when we learned, and he said he asked Mechila he couldn't learn that week. Now, why did the governor want to have breakfast with this fellow? Because the state owed him $62 million, and the governor was begging forbearance, give us a little more time. Okay, needless to say, this guy makes a lot. He has 4,000 employees. He is like phenomenally wealthy beyond anything you could imagine. You go to his house. My house is nicer. My house is bigger. And you talk to, he's a regular guy. He is exactly the kind of person who Hashem gives great success to because it doesn't ruin him. You see, one of the most destructive things you could do to your children is build the mansion. Even if you tell me the palace doesn't destroy you, it'll kill your kids. Your kids are not going to be normal. I'm the rich kid. I'm the kid. You're going to destroy your children. You're going to destroy yourself for sure, your wife, your kids. Don't do it. If you have all the money in the world, my wife and I say this often, we would love to win the lotto. $250 million, provided no one knows about it. Because if one person knows about it, it's not worth it. You see, having a lot of money is either a bracha, a klala, or a nisayon. And the Chovas Vavos says you can tell exactly why it was given to the person. If the person grows more in learning, takes more time involved in the community and various projects, then you see it as a bracha. If a person, because he has much more money, now is much more involved in business and all of the financial issues in another business, then it's a nisayon. And if a person gets swept into this world, buying luxuries and opulence, that is a klola. He's eating his world to come in this world. So if you'd like to know the answer to that question, the answer to that question is win the lotto, build your business, make phenomenal amounts of money. Don't let anybody know about it. That means to say, give your stucca, do your chesed, but don't change your lifestyle because you're going to ruin yourself, ruin your kids. And in fact, if you're really able, and by the way, it's not just that fellow I mentioned. There are quite a number of people I know who make a lot of money. I worked with a man, he ran a program, he spent $1.5 million to create a program. It was a learning program, and working in his business in the afternoon, we had about 40 guys in it. Anyway, he dropped $1.5 million in 1 year on this program, and he didn't even notice that it was a drop in a bucket. And this man is the most grounded, normal, sober person you can imagine. He's not into and his car is like my car, because he's a human being who really gets it. Hashem gives a person for a certain amount of time, a certain amount of money to do great things with, if you have that schus. But that means to say it's a gift, it's on loan, it's given to you by Hashem, maybe for your needs, maybe to support others, maybe to accomplish great things, but it's not yours. And if you start spending it on this world and start building your beautiful mansions and your opulent palaces, again, you're eating up your world to come here, you're destroying your family, you're destroying yourself. Don't do it. Does that answer the question? Jeff Bezos, if you got your 170 billion, give some to the Shmuz, please.
He's watching now.
He's watching now. Okay.
How many more questions can we do, Rabbi Shaver?
We are running a little bit late, but my voice is good. Let's do one more, and hopefully we'll...
One more, okay. I'll end it with I don't even know how to answer.
There's a hand up here. Is there a hand up? There's a hand up. And...
It's Avram Steinberg. Let's put him on. Avram?
So, a question I forgot to mention when I asked my first question a couple minutes ago. A separate question on Pinchas, where he was saying how he had shalom and that's why he was able to live that long.
Yeah. So
I understand that while he's on this world and needs to accomplish whatever he has to accomplish, he has shalom. But wouldn't it defeat the purpose of being in this world if you can't get to the next one? If you're gonna live for much longer than you need to, then what's the point? Why can't you just have shalom for them X amount of years you have to live, and that's it?
Right. Now, there is a concept. The Chasam Sofer, in the introduction to your day, says that when you see a tzaddik who's 60 years old, 70 years old, you should ask the following question: what is he still doing here? The Chasam Sofer says if a person does everything right, listens to their neshama from a tender young age, it doesn't take that long to reach their shleimus. And if you have a tzaddik who's around 60, 70, 80 years of age, you should ask yourself, what's he doing here? And the answer is he's no longer here for himself. He's here for his talmidim, here for his family, here to help others. But you're right. A person like Pinchas might have reached his level of perfection at 80. Nevertheless, the next 100 years, he could chew off a tremendous amount, accomplish a tremendous amount more by helping others, by bringing others up. And his world to come is much greater. His personal shleimus, he might have reached already at 80. And nevertheless, the next 100 years or 200 years is a tremendous, I won't say feather in his cap, it's diamonds in his crown, because what he accomplishes, what he does by bringing others along is infinitely more valuable even than his own shleimus, and therefore it's good for him in this world, good for him in the world to come, and ultimately it's a bracha. All right, let's wrap it here. Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone coming. And please...
Dave, I'm letting you know we had another 10 questions, minimum more to go. So I don't know if we need to do a part 2 on this one.
We'll do part 2 next week. We'll do it next week. But thank you for listening. Please make sure to go on either the Shmuz podcast or the Shmuz app or the Shmuz.com. You can download all the Shmuzim. You can take them with. But again, the app is easier, or the podcast. Also, if you want to join the WhatsApp group, 845-216-9330. Again, that's 845-216-9330. Just include a line, please subscribe me, and we'll put you into the WhatsApp group. I thank you very much, much hatzlacha, and a good week. Thank you.
Take care, bye-bye.